Hello, me lads and lovelies. Captain Edward von Arkham here, coming to you from on board the MHS Hysteria. The crew and I have just returned from the future. Precisely the year 4282. February. I hate February. Nothing ever happens in February. Anyway, we had been hired by a friendly businessman to smuggle some contraband photon amplifiers to a client in Ireland. We don't normally take delivery jobs, but it was for a friend. Everything was going swimmingly until we met the client for the delivery. It was a rather difficult fellow. Well, I say fellow. He was an automaton. Now, I am certainly not prejudiced against robots. Some of my best friends are mechanical. Some of them I built myself. But when you're dealing with an automaton who has a few screws loose, it can get rather frustrating. The robot in question had a faulty Type 12 difference engine cerebral unit. Even in the present, he should have been in a museum. Took us nearly 45 sodding minutes to complete the transaction. For some reason, he thought we were trying to sell him encyclopedias. Dealing with malfunctioning robots can be a massive hemorrhage. So I've created a nifty set of guidelines to aid in such situations. How to deal with malfunctioning automatons. Tip number 1. Remember to breathe. Interacting with a loopy robot can be one of the most infuriating things in the world. So watch your blood pressure and breathe steadily. But don't breathe too deeply or too heavily, because then the robot may think that you're mocking it. Tip number 2. Try unwinding it and winding it back up again. That usually works. Tip number 3. Do not attempt to repair the automaton unless you know what's wrong with it. If you try to reconfigure its speech receptors when they aren't broken, you may end up with a malfunctioning robot that only understands Portuguese. Tip number 4. If you do know what's wrong with the automaton, do not attempt to repair it unless you know how. If you try to reconfigure its speech receptors when you don't know how, you may end up with a malfunctioning robot that only understands Portuguese. Tip number 5. If there are sparks flying from the automaton, do not approach it. And above all, don't lick it. I know it's tempting, but trust me, even if you do survive the shock, the robot will not be happy that you licked it. Tip number 6. If the robot bursts into flames, do not attempt to beat out the fire. It may think that you are assaulting it and try to defend itself. And then you're being attacked by a flaming, malfunctioning, Portuguese-speaking automaton. Tip number 7. If the automaton has a big red button on the back of its neck, whatever you do, what bloody ever you do, good gravy, what bloody ever you do, be sure to press the button! Big red buttons always do fun things. The robot we dealt with had 2 of them. I pressed both. And a very fun thing happened. Shame we didn't have a broom, though. Oh well, all's well that ends well. I think I said well 3 times in that sentence. Well, that's our time for today. I'm going to go install a big red button on my hat. Until next time, stay mad, my duckies. Ooh, look at me! I'm a human. I can breathe. You can't breathe because you're a robot.